Welcome to this first session in a series on the Eightfold Path, sometimes called the Noble Eightfold Path. If you are familiar with the Four Noble Truths, which is in many Buddhist traditions one of the, if not the most fundamental or foundational of all the teachings, the Eightfold Path is the fourth Noble Truth. The first Noble Truth deals with the suffering that comes from clinging. The second Noble Truth is the cause of clinging, which is craving. The third Noble Truth is that there is an end of craving, which leads to the end of suffering. And then the fourth Noble Truth is what is the way, what will support us, what is the pathway, what qualities can we cultivate so we can more authentically actualize or put into practice this liberation from clinging and craving. And that's the Eightfold Path. In this session, I want to give an introduction and overview of the Eightfold Path. And then in subsequent sessions, we'll spend one, or in some cases, possibly more than one session in a sequential order going through each element of the Eightfold Path. The elements of the Eightfold Path, each of them starts with the word that's often translated from Pali in English as right. You may have heard terms like right speech, right livelihood, right action, right effort. And the word right, perfectly fine translation, but in English there can be many different connotations around what we mean by the word right. It should not be taken as right or wrong with any kind of judgmental sense. This is a path of cultivation. These are qualities that we're building and growing over time. So they will blossom and grow and strengthen, but we'll all have, as you'll see when we talk about these, that we'll all have times and areas in our lives in which we fall short. So it's not a judgment, but it should be more thought of as what would be the right things to do or the right way to be if you wanted to attain a certain result, the proper thing that would give that result. That's the way to think about it. The word in Pali is samma, and when you look in the etymology of the word, the Pali Text Society's Pali English Dictionary says that samma actually has the meaning to be connected in one with something. And it has a lovely meaning, right? A lovely sense. So as we hear each of these elements, the way to think of it is that right speech, right action, for example, are speech and action that's connected in one with the path, with the way, with our highest intention or aspirations. That's kind of the way to hold it. Sometimes you'll hear samma translated as wise or skillful, which is a good translation. I will use the word right just as a shorthand, it's one of the common translations. So let me just name each of the elements in order, and then I want to say a little bit about different ways that they're organized and approached. And I'll go into a little bit on each one, but won't go into a lot of depth. That's what will happen in subsequent sessions. So the first element of the Eightfold Path is called right view, or sometimes right understanding. And this basically, it has a range of meanings, but in the beginning of our practice, it certainly has the idea, if we want to undertake anything, if we're new, you want to have some level of understanding of where this is aiming, what's the purpose, what's the goal, what are the basic foundational Dharma teachings, so we have an idea of the context or the broader container with which we hold and understand what we're doing. So that's the basic idea with right understanding. Again, there's a lot more that we'll unpack in a later session. So this first one, right view, right understanding. The second element is right intention, or sometimes translated as right thought, but it's really around our intention. And you can see coming out of the first step, first element, right understanding, then that informs, then we have some intentions of what qualities we want to cultivate in ourselves, what practices we want to undertake, where we're aiming, informed by right understanding. We set some intentions around that. So that's those first two. The next three are right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And they're concerned with how we show up and how we live in the world. That first section that I just named, right understanding and right intention, are called the wisdom group. And if you're interested in the Pali, the word is panya, translated as wisdom, the wisdom group. This second group is called, the word in Pali is sila. You'll hear that word a lot, sila. And it's translated as ethics, but really morality group. And it concerns with how do we act and live and be in a way that creates less suffering for ourselves, for others. How do we act and be in a way that creates more well-being or happiness? Well-being is the word I like, for ourselves and others. That's the morality group. So right speech is a big topic. Essentially is just speech that's not harmful, that's useful, that's truthful, has a lot of elements to it. Right action deals with just the way we live and act in our relationships with ourselves, with others, with our communities. Right livelihood, that's a big topic of basically in our modern times, I think it's gotten for some of us more complex, because what is livelihood that's not creating harm? There's a set list that's given in the original source texts. So we'll talk about that when we get to that section in a future session. But in our modern times, it's common we can think of many ways, types of work, livelihood that we all engage in that may create harm in some way. So that's not really what the original texts were talking about, some of the different ways we may think about that. But I think a basic way for now to think about it is that there are some kinds of livelihood that are clearly harmful. So we don't want to do that. But in general, for other things, if we have questions, we want to more bring some awareness, some inquiry, bring some mindfulness, and just stay in the question and just explore what our relationship is with that. So again, we'll say a lot more about that down the road. So we've got the wisdom section, right view, right understanding, right intention, the morality, the sila section, right speech, right action, right livelihood. And then the last three elements are right effort, right mindfulness, and right, the word is samadhi, we translate sometimes as concentration. I'm going to leave it undefined for now. Perhaps some of you have seen some of the other videos that we've done on this topic of the word samadhi. I'll just say for now that the word concentration is problematic because there's so many connotations we have. Many people use the term, but not all have the same meaning about it. And what is its place in meditation? So that's the word samadhi. This group, right effort, right mindfulness, right samadhi, is called the samadhi group. So you can see the importance that the Eightfold Path is putting on this quality of samadhi, the deeper stages of steadying and deepening and settling our minds. So that's more the cultivation of the qualities of our hearts and mind, you could say. So one way to think about it is it's a progression. Really, all of these elements should be at work all the time. You're not necessarily consciously trying to keep them all in your mind at the same time. That's probably too much. But obviously, the seal of morality is kind of always important. We may not consciously be focusing on it all the time as we put our attention maybe on more of the meditation part. But certainly when we're out of line with sila, we'll feel it and we'll know that's not really the way we want to be. It won't feel right. So the sila will come in. Our right understanding and right view is informing everything as we do more of these meditative practices. So all of these pieces are there together. It could be viewed as a progression, though, starting with, as we said, the wisdom part and moving through. There's another formulation, another way to organize the Eightfold Path, and rather than beginning with items number 1 and 2, we actually start with Sila, and the way it's organized, rather than the groups starting with wisdom, morality, samadhi, which would be called Panya, Sila, Samadhi, it's actually called Sila, Samadhi, Panya. It begins with the Sila group, right speech, right action, right livelihood. Next, we do the cultivation, the Samadhi group, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And then that brings us back around to the wisdom group, but now we're coming at it from a whole nother level. I said earlier, it's kind of, it could be a beginning understanding and intention that we bring, that we all bring, but then there's a maturation that comes from our practice in which we've sort of come back around, and now as a result of all the meditation, the different Dharma practices we've done, wisdom is happening on a whole depth now that perhaps wasn't available to us before. So the wisdom section is understood in a certain way in the beginning, just having a right understanding of what we're doing, and then it matures into a real, it's a big piece about what is wisdom, a clear understanding about ourselves, about what's true, what leads to happiness and what leads to suffering, things like that, is really a way to think about it. So there's these different ways that it's organized: Sila, Samadhi, Panya, or starting with the right view and all the way through. So that's the basic overview and understanding. Just one more comment to make on it for this session, and that is the effort and action are two elements, right action and right effort. They're both a sense of what we're doing. The action, right action, is in the Sila section, and the right effort is in the Samadhi section. So there are different ways you might understand it. I would offer that everything you're doing is some amount of effort or some amount of action. Since the right effort is grouped into the Samadhi section, in the context of the Eightfold Path, it's specifically referring to the right effort we're making in our meditative practices. That's what it's dealing with here. The right effort is both the right amount of effort, but also effort directed in the proper direction. So again, more will be said about that. The right action piece, because when we're taking effort in meditation, of course, that's action, but it's dealing with specifically just the general actions we take in our daily lives. So that's the overview for now, and in the next session we'll begin with the first element on right view or right understanding.